Victory at Sea Pacific is a single-player World War II naval RTS featuring a huge and historically accurate real-time open-world sandbox experience across the entire Pacific theatre from Alaska to China and Australia. The game's features include covert reconnaissance from sea and air, over 120 vessels and aircraft, all of which are faithfully recreated with historic accuracies, and the game lends itself well to cat and mouse submarine warfare. There are shipping convoys and amphibious coastal invasions, and crew management involving maintenance, rationing, experience and morale. The developers and producers Evil Twin Artworks have previously released two other games. Man o' War Corsair Warhammer Naval Battles, released in 2017, received mixed reviews and was priced at $22.99. Victory at Sea is the prequel to Victory at Sea Pacific, or VASP as I'm going to refer to it in this review, was released in 2014 and will currently set you back £17.49. Victory at Sea, the original, has a 75% positive feedback on Steam at the moment, and Victory at Sea Pacific looks to expand on all aspects of the original. The release date for this game was on the 14th of September 2018, and on Steam at least, the game will currently set you back £26.99, which is $29.99 at full price. This is a title very much suited to those with a real passion for World War II naval history, and especially those who have a specific passion for the Pacific theatre. There are 3 campaigns available, all of which are based in the same time and space, but each with their own specific objectives, limitations and of course strengths. To start, you only have access to the American campaign, but progress will unlock both the British, and unlike its predecessor, you can now also play as the Japanese faction, and each faction is complemented by their most noteworthy ships and fleets. The game can move very quickly at times, but mostly it is a very slow and methodical progression. It can take a very long time to sail a fleet across the North Pacific Ocean, but thankfully, the game allows you to speed up time. This is available whilst viewing the entire Pacific Theatre via the bridge or the map to you and me, and it can be increased up to 1,000 times normal speed. Thankfully, should anything significant happen, the game will pause and alert you to the fact. However, when in combat mode, you can only increase time by 25 times. But, unlike bridge mode, if you do come under fire, that speed increase remains constant, and I have lost a lot of ships this way. I really hope this is something that's changed in the game, as it's something that will most definitely cause great annoyance. Fleets can be made up of many different vessels: destroyers, aircraft carriers, submarines, torpedo boats, bombers, torpedo planes, and many, many more, each of which have their own set of advantages and disadvantages. There is a necessary learning curve when picking your fights. Obviously, going up against a destroyer with a tugboat is only ever going to end one way. The game allows you to control individual units, squadrons, or even an entire fleet. You can micromanage everything, even down to the individual aircraft on your aircraft carriers, or direct the AI to take the helm. To be successful though, you'll need to stay on your objectives and not get sidetracked by the many advances and sightings of your enemy. Also, you need to use your resources wisely, whilst ensuring that you keep crew morale, food supplies, fuel, repairs and weaponry in constant supply. Successful encounters will earn you warbands. Warbands are used to build new ships and allow you to create new fleets. That is, if you have access to a shipyard. Shipyards can be upgraded, as can the ships themselves, and each ship, depending on size, will take a certain number of days to produce. Build time is certainly not historically accurate, taking just 13 days to produce a destroyer, and equally, I would question if the sailing times are accurate too. Enemy AI seems pretty smart on the most part. They have an objective and will be proactively trying to achieve them. They will also be reactive to your movements, so it is possible to throw a feint and create a distraction whilst you effectively nip round the back. Allowing your own AI to take over though is a little more hit or miss, literally. It's not unheard of for your torpedo planes to fly to the last place that a sub was seen and fire every single one of your torpedoes at absolutely nothing. Truly superb, chaps. There are land-based battles in the game. Graphically, they're really not up to much. But more importantly, I couldn't figure out how to defend or how to capture them. An area certainly in need of attention. There is the option to pause the gameplay completely whilst you make the tactical decisions that are necessary to win the game. This isn't really necessary, to be fair, as the game itself is pretty slow paced, but it is there for those who want or need it. I'd say that VASP is a comprehensively detailed military naval RTS, but one which lacks high-end polish. This is immediately evident when you load the game for the first time and are presented with a very simple, dated main menu design. It doesn't auto-detect your screen resolution either, and it looks pretty terrible, but, thankfully, it is easy to remedy and the game appears to support resolutions up to Ultra HD. The game's UI is very similar to that of its predecessor, and whilst highly functional in some areas, it also lacks a high-end polish throughout. Definitely the UI would benefit from greater configuration control, being able to resize and adjust the layout positioning with drag and drop. It's just not possible at the moment, and on screen the information is a little bit small, especially in the log screen and on the unit/port information. This is okay for most of us, but not for all of us, and there seems to be, at least as far as I can tell, no way to remove unit icon info, which causes significant visibility problems, especially aircraft. When you have a number of aircraft flying, you literally cannot see what you are doing at all. I also found that the ship's health bars quite often obscured my view. If you could just turn this off, or maybe minimize it, or maybe with a UI upgrade, place it somewhere which isn't quite so in the way. That's not to say that what lays behind the UI is not worthy of mention. On the contrary, the game's strategic depth is immediately obvious. VASP's modelling is respectable, but certainly not groundbreaking. I think it's good enough for RTS. The ship and aircraft models are pretty decent too, perhaps a little bit subdued, but they're okay. You are able to zoom all the way in and get a decent look at the ships, which is nice. I would suggest turning off depth of field in the options menu, helps you get a bit of a cleaner look. The ocean animation and ambient lighting throughout the night and day cycle is acceptable and is often bright and vivacious, even to the point of being blinding, and that can have an impact on tactical awareness. Planes attacking you from the sun, for example. The explosions in this game are really good. Watching your torpedoes racing just under the surface is also very well done. Time it just right, and the reward is very satisfying. Unfortunately, ships do not show any structural damage whatsoever, nor will you see any animated crew. However, ships do sink, and it often takes a good while for them to do, which is in keeping with reality. Despite all my attempts though, I've yet to spot any ship break in two, so I rather suspect this might not be a thing. Sailing animation is literally non-existent, unfortunately. A shame, because this really is so very evident. I would liken it to playing battleships as a child on your bedroom floor, except that, if I recall correctly, my battleships had a wheel in them which forced that ebb and flow movement, and truth be told, without that it really does detract from the immersion. As the guns start to shout and boom though, the game really starts to feel quite authentic, and large-scale battles are something I'm not yet ready to cope with, but at some point I would be excited to see. The game seems to run without fault, everything loads pretty darn quickly and ticks over a solid 50 to 60 FPS, although I've yet to test 200 ships in an almighty sea battle. I've already mentioned the UI, and for me this is the only area where I would like to see considerable change. Not being able to resize or drag and drop information does force you to just accept it the way it is. Some simple and small changes here could really make this better. Being able to change the size of text, or the ability to turn off individual icon names for example, it just gets too messy on the screen and could do with a fresh design eye overall. In the top center of your screen is the date, the XP progression, and a percentage bar based on war overview. Be aware of the date, especially as using the X times speed option can allow the enemy to gain huge land gains without you even realizing. When you have a ship selected, you will also see its particulars in a very nicely laid out panel at the bottom of the screen. Truth be told, this is not a simulator. This is very much a fun to play RTS. It does have many realistic offerings, but historical accuracy is certainly not among them. The AI are both proactive and reactive to your movements. This does allow for some cat and mouse and even feint attacks, and despite there being a constant and initially accurate dateline, including some real-life radio soundbites of well-known military figures from the time, this game will quickly veer away from what is historically true.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
The benefits of this include never knowing exactly what's going to happen next, and potentially gives the game more replayability. Plus, you're free to approach each campaign and situation in a variety of ways. Since the original was released, a lot of changes have been applied to realism. More depth has been introduced, and as such, more micromanagement is required in order to keep things afloat. Ships have crew who can progress and improve. They also have morale, and low morale is deadly, as is running out of fuel, ammo, or rations. Ships need to be maintained, repaired, and refueled. Knowing which ports are most valuable is something that you will only learn in time. I really like that aircraft carriers have to turn into the wind in order for aircraft to take off, and it is pretty cool to watch them take off, then group up into formation. But, oddly, despite ships having fuel restrictions, it appears that aircraft do not. It is possible that I have missed it, but it does seem that they do not have to refuel ever. So, my advice for now is get them airborne and just keep them there. Fleets, squadrons and aircraft all have formations which they can adopt. although there aren't many of them to choose from, and I've yet to see one called Staggered, which is a formation I'm almost certain exists in the real world. Hunting subs is great fun, but tricky. The sonar, the depth charges, it's all there. Perhaps not quite in enough detail for some. For example, avoiding depth charges is achieved in a pretty abstract way and doesn't really feel very exciting. That being said, looking through the sub's periscope for attack or land-based reconnaissance is really nicely done. You can also use binoculars when aboard any of the ships. Reconnaissance is fundamental for success, and regardless of how you do it, it's a big part of this game. The audio in VASP is very much a mixed bag. The accompanying music is terrible and instantly needs to be turned off. Equally, the ambiance volume is deafening and causes some strange rattling sounds in my headset. Aircraft are another semi-horrible audio choice. The closer you get, the less you can bear it. Explosions are, however, very nice. Perhaps a little more boom and rumble would be good, but I like explosions and these are just fine. And the sounds of the creaking, crushing ships as they sink are ace. Although, I'd perhaps like some human suffering thrown in too, but that's just me. Thankfully, the audio is split pretty well, allowing you to adjust to your own personal liking. Overall, once adjusted, the in-game audio is okay. There's not going to be any awards likely to arrive as a result of it though. Some of the audio in this game is good, like the sonar audio when hunting subs, but some of it is really poor. The worst thing for me is the order confirmation sound. It's terrible, and it's something that simply must be changed. The game only supports mouse and keyboard controls, but button configuration alterations are available. By the way, the reset button here is actually an undo button. Bug fixing or rename? One thing is required, but I wonder if the game might benefit from more hotkeys, retreat and return to the nearest harbour, or repair and refuel, for example. Squadron creation and ship management though is incredibly easy to use and it's really effective. You can effortlessly organise fleets into smaller squadrons for specific duties. This is so important when hunting down subs which seemingly vanish right before your eyes. And you can even split a single fleet into two separate fleets at any time. You can also chain events and effectively create patrols. This is done using the left shift button. It's not officially a patrol. For example, you cannot give specific commands to allow for automated responses. So for example, you can't say immediately hunt down subs but leave convoy ships alone. Maybe giving a task force individual commands for patrols and maybe even have a couple of convoy hunters included within one. More could be done here. More control options and automated setups could allow for less micromanagement while still retaining that overall command. One area where more control could also potentially be introduced is around convoy routes. At the moment, it is pretty much automated. If you control the ports, then a convoy will be established. You have some small control over the frequency and behavior of them. This is achieved by adjusting port priority and status, but ultimately it's out of your hands. It is possible to disrupt and even control the enemy by engaging and destroying their convoys and disrupting shipping routes. And there is much XP and war bonds available to be earned by doing this. But I would argue that greater influence would probably benefit the game for most. The game includes 3 video tutorials which are actually playable in-game. They're okay, but after watching them all, I was barely any wiser than when I started. This wasn't really helped by the fact that the ambient audio sound stayed on throughout and it was just way too loud. This was a massive distraction and effectively gave me a bit of a headache. These videos and more are also available on the official game's YouTube channel, so you can go and check them out there. Thankfully, there is a far more step-by-step comprehensive type tutorial included in the game itself. It gets you to the point where you kind of know which end is up, and then it says, okay, go win the War of the Pacific Ocean and do it quickly. You will get creamed many times over. This game is not something you can just guess at. It will take time, and you will learn far more than the tutorials teach you by getting your butt whooped. In my humble opinion, the tutorials don't really go deep enough. Perhaps introducing more tooltips would be a good way forward, but again, that's a UI thing, and as it's a nightmare already, that just might make things worse. I spent much of my time trying things out. I learnt a lot that way, but I also lost a lot of ships, got confused often, and even discovered what I believe to be the odd bug. Or at least they're things that I assume were bugs, and they took me a long time to figure out, but some of them were down to my own misunderstanding, which I personally attribute to the poor UI, but definitely some of them did look like real bugs, like for example, units disappearing from squadrons and then no longer being controllable by the UI controls. There are a decent number of ships and various vessels to enjoy here, over 120 in fact, many of which are unlockable, and as yet I haven't even seen them. I understand that there are multiple aircraft carrier types to enjoy. There are 3 levels of difficulty. I played on medium and it was a huge challenge, but no doubt I would get better with each defeat. The 3 campaigns are all based in the same location with the same enemy, but with different objectives. I rather think that they should be available from the start. This would, if nothing else, boost the game's content for new players. But I understand how many games do opt for this unlockable progression system. I have to say, I'm not really a fan of this approach, to be honest, unless the progression is based on something logical, like financial, scientific, or manufacturing limitations. There is no indication that this game will ever support multiplayer. The dev team appear to be interested on improving the game, so never say never, but if you buy this, then buy it with the assumption that it is only ever going to be a single player experience. Modding was a prominent part of the original title and is set to be available again here. Modification of the core game components appears to be a possibility, and that could be used to increase realism, and whether or not modding could open up the gates for multiplayer of some type, I simply cannot say, but again, never say never. Despite the map being absolutely huge, I do wonder what limitations forced the development team to move away from mapping the entire planet. That would have been something to behold. I'm not sure if maps are going to be a modding option or not at this time, but obviously that would increase replayability a huge amount. That being said, to start with at least, the map is so big you will likely get lost. Trying to find one of the very small islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean is not so easy to do. There appears to be no search function for islands either, but you can quickly identify and locate your own ports and fleets using the top right hand menu. I mentioned earlier that you can scroll right in, which is good. You can also scroll all the way out, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you have a mouse with the free scroll options. It's really slow to scroll in and to scroll out, and doing it one scroll at a time actually takes quite a serious amount of time. Replayability. Well, okay, yes, the location will be the same location, albeit huge. Yes, it will always start on the same date, albeit with 3 different factions to choose from. But the chances of you having the exact same battle are minute, at least until you master the game itself. By then though, hopefully the modding community will have introduced a lot of new content. Overall, you'd have to be really into your World War II Pacific Ocean, World War II Navy battles in order for this game to have a lot of replayability. Whilst VASP is, in my humble opinion, a very accomplished game, it really isn't for those with short attention spans, or those who really hate to lose, or even those who need to have constant rewards. This is a thinking man or woman's game, an individual challenge which requires extensive knowledge and forethought. It will take time to learn and even longer to master. I don't think it's the most in-depth World War II RTS that I have played, but it certainly offers some great features. The in-game controls are really effective, and the AI, on the most part, are not total idiots, which creates a good World War II battle feel. It's noticeably improved over the original in a number of areas, more depth, micromanagement, and content. But I do think that naval warfare has to be your primary World War II focus in order to justify the £30 price tag on Steam at this time. For me, more depth and realism would be desired, and a better UI is definitely an essential part of this, as is the option to have multiplayer, be it local or online. Whilst some audio aspects of the game are really nice, many are not, and at the very least some audio balancing should be addressed. With the price and mentioned improvements aside, VASP is an enjoyable and challenging experience. Without a multiplayer challenge though, it might get stale sooner rather than later. The possibilities of modding and perhaps maps could certainly ensure that this game stays fresh for longer, and the dev team seem to be honest and genuine and are interested in your thoughts. More importantly, they appear to be listening. It is much better than the original, but have they done enough? To be honest, I don't think I can answer that just yet. I will urge you now to go and check out other reviews, especially from those who have greater knowledge of the original title. It's definitely a good game, but with just a little TLC and a few tweaks and changes here and there, it could be a great game. My name's Mike, this is SimUK. Thank you so much for watching this review. Remember, hit that like button if you enjoyed it, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks for watching, take care, bye for now. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video today. I really appreciate you coming along and taking the time to do that. I want to say a big thank you to each and every one of you who watched this video today. Special big thank you to our Patreons and supporters on Twitch. But everybody who comes and watches, you all count, you are all part of this. And I thank you so much. If you hit that like button, I will like you twice as much. Even more than that, perhaps. It is for you guys that I make these videos, so it matters to me a huge amount if you enjoy watching them, and if you don't, you need to tell me. So thanks for watching, take care of yourselves, until next time, goodbye for now.